Good afternoon, world changers. I hope you're all well. It is Suzy Beaumont, personal development consultant and founder of Change Your World. And I am joined by Kamalyn Kaur, who is a mindset coach, psychotherapist, and founder of Key Therapies. And we are talking about decluttering your mind. Is this something you should be doing? And the reason we're talking about this is we are continuing our winter wellness feature on BBC Radio Scotland. We're on every Monday morning at just after 11 o'clock. And we talked about this subject, but we always get like 10 to 15 minutes and we've got, as with always, me and Cam have always got something more to say. So we're doing our podcast and we're going to be talking about this. So if you have any questions, do post them in the comments below and we can respond to that. But first of all, Cam, we're talking about decluttering our mind, doing a spring clean of our mind. Why do we need to do it? What does it mean to spring clean your mind?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Because a lot of us don't think about that. So as soon as springtime comes, we do our big clear out. We clear out our homes, want fresh bed sheets, clean everything. We will have a wardrobe clear out, get a new wardrobe in, but we actually don't declutter what's going on in our head. And what can happen over the years is with life events, life experiences, situations that take place in life, especially with everything that's happened with COVID as well and all the trauma that we've experienced as a result of it, we can all have a build-up of negative thoughts, self-critical thinking, negative self-talk. We can have judgmental views about ourselves. We can also have limiting self-beliefs as well, which if we don't actually take time out to stop and reflect and clear out, they can just start building up and creating a bit of cobwebs in our mind and then getting us stuck in a rut and repeating the same things again and again. And when I talk about things, I'm referring to unhelpful patterns and habits and behaviors.
Okay, so a number of questions that were springing to my mind. My brain's getting totally cluttered just thinking about that. But one of the things I was thinking there, so I read that basically 95% of the brain is unconscious and 5% is conscious. And that's the stuff that we are aware of, the thoughts that we are aware of. So how do we begin to deal with the 95% of the clutter that's in there that we're not even aware? How do we bring it to our attention and to the fore so that we can then start dealing with it?
Yeah, so we actually start looking at what we can see first of all. That's the first thing, right? So focus on the 5% that is visible to you, and that will be visible to you in your behaviors, in your habits, and in certain patterns that you're repeating. So if there's certain people that you keep attracting into your life again and again, if there's certain health choices that you keep on making, if there's certain foods that you keep on eating, if there's certain people or relationships that you keep getting into, which you know are not good for you, but you keep repeating the same patterns again and again, then I would say focus on that. Focus on what's evident and in front of you. And then what happens is, when you start doing work on a conscious level and you start realizing, well, actually, the reason why that person keeps coming back into my life is because A, I'm not saying no. B, I'm not setting a boundary. C, I'm making myself too available. D, a part of me on a deeper level maybe wants that person to come back because it makes me feel loved or nourished or happy or whatever it is. Then you start to dig a little bit deeper then, don't you? Because then you think, so why is that then? Why do I need to feel like that? Why am I okay with that person treating me like that? Why am I okay here eating all this food, even though I know it doesn't make me happy and it's not good for me? So this is what then leads you to dig a little bit deeper and then start bringing to the surface any subconscious behaviors, patterns, or beliefs. But the easiest way to do it, not the easiest, but the simplest way to do it would be to focus on what you can see in the first instance.
Yeah, that's definitely good advice. Deal with what's in front of you first.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because when you start doing this work and start digging, you can start to realize how skewed your thinking is. It's like, you might have a behavior or a thought, and when you give it space, time, and acknowledgement, you're kind of like, well, that's odd. Why am I thinking that? Or why do I have that belief system? So, and that can be uncomfortable to deal with that, and do like an honest appraisal of your thoughts. You've got these thoughts going on, and when you do give them time, you've given them that honest appraisal and you thought, that's not really healthy. Why am I thinking that? So what would be your advice to people that are kind of going, I'm embarrassed to acknowledge this. I'm embarrassed to talk to somebody about it. I don't know what to do with it. Even though I've acknowledged it, I don't know what to do with it now. You know, it's there and it's still hanging around, cluttering my mind. And I'm not, whether they don't feel ready or they're not, they feel embarrassed or too, not prepared to be vulnerable enough to share it.
Yeah, but to answer, so first of all, I think we're the only species that actually has that ability to think about the thought that we're actually having, which is it's a metacognition, isn't it? It's like you actually are able to think about the thought that you're having and then analyze. So why am I thinking like that? How accurate is that thought? How real is it? Where is that coming from? What do I want to do with that? Do I want to keep it?
Fascinating, because you think if we manage to nail it, what could we actually
what can we do?
That?
Yeah, do you see what I mean? So if you think about it, so that in itself is a skill. The fact that we can have a thought about a thought, there's not a lot of species out there that can do that, right? So that in itself is a skill set. So the fact that you're able to say, why do I keep thinking that? Or why does that thought keep popping into my head? Or what does that thought mean? Or what does that thought want me to do? That in itself is you starting some kind of a work, right? The other thing is, once you've identified what it is, you need to ask yourself, what do you want to do with that at that point? Because the thing is, some people don't want to change at that point, and that's okay, because we're maybe not ready, maybe we don't have the resources. So say, for example, somebody wants to leave a relationship. They might not have the infrastructure to leave that relationship just yet, so they might want to get their finances in order, sort their kids out, get a property, get a flat, and that's okay. So you don't, just because you've had a reflection on a thought, it doesn't mean you have to act on it straight away. We do need to be rational and logical and sensible about things as well. So think about what you want to do. If there's something you can do in the present moment, then start breaking it down into small, manageable chunks of like steps and actions that you can take. If it's just a thought and you're still reflecting around it, there's no rush. Take your time. Unless your life is at risk, take your time and think about what that thought is and what you want to do and where you want to be in the long run. And then you can make a plan in due course. So just because, and I think this is why a lot of people don't want to acknowledge things that are going on in their lives, because they feel as though if I acknowledge it, I have to quickly do something about it. You don't have to quickly do something. Sometimes it's just enough to realize that something's not right, or to understand that something needs your attention, and then sit with it for a while until you know what you want to do about it, or until you can speak to somebody that can give you some clarity on what you want to do about it.
So that's the interesting thing, because it is very much like the Matrix. You've taken the red pill, you've seen it now, you can't unsee it, you know it, you can't unknow it. And it's like, okay, so it might be that realization that, I don't know, a relationship's not healthy for you, or you're in the wrong job, or, something you're doing is not serving you. And once you know that, it's like you can't ignore it anymore.
You can't ignore it.
You can ignore it, because you can use lots of avoidance techniques, and we do this all the time in human nature. We will bury it down and hide it under stuff, get ourselves busy, or use alcohol or drugs or whatever vice it is you turn to cover it up. But it's still there, it's still taking up brain space. And I was going to say you can only avoid it for so long, but actually I've seen people avoid it for the whole of their lives, and never really get to the point of facing up to it. And that creates a whole load of suffering. So whilst it's terrifying when you have that moment. I've been there several times in my life where, I've realized something, it's come to the forefront, and I think, I can't deny this anymore. I need to face this. But I know that that's going to result in numerous changes in my life, like maybe ending a relationship, or moving, or changing jobs, or whatever it might be, significant life changes. And, there's going to be hurt and upset and tears along the way. And so how would you encourage somebody that's maybe listening to this, or, having that point where they've just had an acknowledgement where they're like, I can't hide from this anymore, I need to face it, but I'm terrified. What's the first step? What can they do?
Yeah. So first thing is, it's okay to be scared, because anytime you're growing or you're pushing yourself out your comfort zone or you're stepping into the land of uncertainty, you're going to feel scared, aren't you? That's natural. But rationalize your fear. What actually are you scared of? Like, what's the worst thing? Realistically, what's the worst thing that can happen in that situation? When we're feeling scared, our brain has a way of going from rational, logical thinking into emotional, irrational,
Worst case
erratic,
scenario.
impulsive. Yeah. So you can catastrophize. You literally go from like 0 miles an hour to 120, and oh my God, I won't be able to cope, and it's never going to be the same, and this is going to happen, and I'll never get over it. It's about like, let's just calm down, let's just rein it in. Realistically, what is the worst case possible scenario here? What's the likelihood of that taking place? And if that does take place, how will you deal with it? And what will you do? So that's you making it almost a psychological contingency plan now. That's what you're doing, okay? When you start to do that, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to realize how difficult that situation actually is, and it will help you to plan for it and prepare for it, or you're going to realize that you have catastrophized it in your head. It's not as awful or as bad. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's not as bad or as awful as you think it is, and it will help you to rein in that moment. But the key is, I don't recommend anybody free fall into changes in life. Like, I am not a big believer of that at all. I think it's important to grow, and I think it's important to constantly push yourself. But at the same time, I think you need to be sensible when you're doing it, and not jump into the darkness or jump into the deep end without having some kind of a safety line there in the first place. So it's okay to be scared, and it's okay to be nervous, and it's okay to be terrified. But at the same time, rationalize that fear. How real is it? If it's real, how are you going to deal with it? If it's not real, then you start to feel a little bit more anchored in that moment.
Yeah, and it's doing those stepping stones, the baby steps, and just dealing with what's in front of you rather than jumping to the worst case scenario.
Worst case
Go,
scenario.
okay, what's the situation here that I need to deal with first and foremost, and that'll create momentum and hopefully confidence to kind of move forward with the changes you do. But yeah, I'm a huge advocate of not free falling as well. Do the prep work, put some safety nets and
Safety
support in
nets.
place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so. But the other thing is, Susie, we all, not just people, we all do this. We do a lot of generalizations. I'm never like, so when I work with women that are leaving a relationship, never going to find anybody else again. No one will understand. Nobody
like
cares.
8 billion people in the world.
Exactly, right? So I don't ever want to be a burden on anybody. Everybody's going to think I failed. And you just think, right, who's everybody? Who's nobody? And what do you mean by never? Like, so see, these are what we call generalizations. And then these are the things that make us feel as though the situation is a lot worse than it actually is. So see, even when you start unpacking that a little bit, and I'm like, no one? Who's no one? And they're like, oh, like just like my family and friends. I went, so you're telling me your family and friends are not going to understand why you left that relationship? And then they'll say, well, no, actually, they'd probably be quite happy that I left because they didn't like him in the first place. So do you know when they start, but then it's quite funny because we always have a laugh about these moments, right? Because then as they're saying it, they'll stop and they think, right, okay, I kind of like, I think I overreacted in that moment a little bit, right?
But even if you are in that situation where nobody understands, it doesn't matter because you are the one in that relationship, and it's about how you are impacted and what it's doing to you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So it's kind of like, okay, well, if nobody else gets it, it doesn't matter. They are not living your life. I mean, there's so many things that I've changed in my life, and people, I've got friends and family that are just like, oh man, here she goes, Suzy's off on one again. But I'm just like, do you know what? It's the right choice for me. That's fundamentally, and when I make better, more empowering choices for me, it has an empowering ripple effect for everybody around me. I show up as a better person, and I stand in my truth and my values and my honesty and integrity. And that only goes to serving people around me.
Yeah.
So going back to spring cleaning your mind and decluttering your mind. I mean, we've said some of the things that can happen when your mind is cluttered. So, we've talked about intrusive thoughts, judgment, negative behaviors and traits. So how do we begin to start turning them around and actually getting them out of our heads?
Okay, so the first thing is identify them, which is why it's really important to start noticing patterns, noticing little rituals, noticing certain thought processes that keep coming into your head. So the first thing I would say is be aware of the way that you speak to yourself, because the way that you speak to yourself will actually let you realize what your patterns are. Is there a certain story or narrative you keep telling yourself? Is there certain things or certain assumptions or certain tasks that you keep repeating again and again without even realizing that you're doing that? So when you start thinking about your self-talk, this is when you'll start to notice how you are and how you show up and how you communicate to those around you. That's the first thing. Once you've identified it, then obviously you can decide what you want to change or what you think is helpful, how it's not helpful. So once you start noticing the patterns, you can then start connecting to how does it make me feel when I think that about myself? How does it make me feel when I don't go and do X, Y, and Z? How does it make me feel when I hold myself back from something I really want to do? So do you see where when you attach a feeling to a thought, then that gives you the drive and the determination to then change it or to let go of it or to then think about, right, I need to do something with this. I'm not sure what, but I need to go and speak to somebody who does know how to change this, which is where practitioners come in, health practitioners, mindset coaches, psychotherapists, counselors, because we don't all know how to fix things that we want to fix in our lives. And it's okay to go and speak to somebody else and say, can you tell me how to deal with that? Or can you tell me how to fix that? Can you tell me how to address that or challenge that? So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is, even just as a simple exercise, start speaking to yourself the way you would speak to a loved one. This is one of the things, and I think I mentioned this on the radio show as well on the Monday. We speak to ourselves in a way that we would never dream of speaking to somebody else in, right? The language we use, the tone, the harshness, the critical voice, the actual self-deprecating language that we use, we would never speak like that to anybody else. Yet we extend that kind of language and vocabulary to ourselves. So even if you can start becoming more mindful, anytime you're about to put yourself down, ask yourself, would I say that to somebody that I love and I care for and I absolutely am very, very protective over? If you wouldn't speak like that to them, you now need to change whatever you're saying to yourself and respond to yourself the way you would respond to that loved one. Even just doing those two simple exercises will help you become so much more aware of how you speak and the way it makes you feel.
Yeah, I mean, the self-awareness is the absolutely fundamental starting point to making any change, because if you're not aware of the problem, you can't address it. So really becoming mindful of what is going on is the key. And of course, we're just so busy. And the one thing I know that when my mind is cluttered, my environment gets cluttered. And I will see, you know, when I start getting overwhelmed and busy, initially I'll see my kind of office space getting, you know, paperwork piling up, things that just shouldn't be there, not put back in their place. And then I see it extending to the rest of my house, you know, if it's just overwhelmed. So is this, you know, if we're looking at loved ones or even just looking at ourselves, is this a signal that we've got a cluttered mind if there is a lot of kind of mess and disorder and clutter just lying around?
Okay, not always. It just depends on the individual. So some people, it depends if it's something that they're doing out of character, but then that applies to any behavior, doesn't it? Not just about having a cluttered house. If they're doing something which is not normally in their character or is out of character for them, then it could be a sign of there's too much going on inside their head, or they've got too much on their plate, or they're trying to manage too much, in which case you can ask them how they are, but without pointing out the reason why. So
your house is a tip. What's going on?
Tip. Are you okay? Because straight away the person's going to be like, how dare you? I'm not going to share anything with you ever again. So don't judge them. Don't point out the actual behavior that you've noticed, because that's just literally like a backhanded slap across somebody else's face, you know? So there's no point in actually doing that. So if you notice a change in somebody's behavior and it's out of character, so that a cluttered house is an example, but what sometimes, and this is most likely to happen with people, is they become almost a bit clumsy right? Or they become distracted, or they're starting a sentence and not able to finish the sentence because they can't remember what they're about to say, or they're talking to you and they walk away and they actually can't remember what you've said, or people are walking into rooms and thinking, what did I come in here for? You know, or they go shopping and they forget the one thing that they actually left the house for, right? But they bring everything else back instead, right? Even so, these are most likely the things that start to take place when somebody's mind is cluttered, right? Because they become very absent-minded. And the other thing is, have you ever had those days, Susie, where you hold, doesn't matter what you're holding, it keeps coming out your hands and flying out your hands, you keep dropping everything, right? And you just think, oh my God, what's going on today? These are usually signs that your body is giving you, saying, I've got too much on and I'm not focusing, right? So these are also signals to look out for. But I would definitely recommend, if you notice a change in behavior, then ask the person, how are you? Rather than, why are you doing that? Or why do you keep dropping everything today? Or why is your house so untidy, right? Because that's not going to start off well. So I think if the behavior is out of character, then definitely it's worth your while asking the person how they are. And if they do say that they're finding things difficult, or they're struggling, or they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, ask them how you can help. So don't make suggestions, because that's what we do as human beings. We want to fix the problem, want to give them solutions. Don't do that. Ask them, what can I do to help or support you? And let them make a decision and let them come to you.
Yeah. Another one, and I've spoke about this with you before, about asking the question, what's on your bridge? Because we give the analogy in the stress management workshops that I run about, you know, your bridge being overwhelmed, and when there's too much traffic on that bridge and too much load, then the bridge starts bowing, buckling, crumbling, and if it carries on over a long time, it will eventually collapse. So we teach this kind of in the workspace, but it can be applied to the family life, just by asking a person, what's on your bridge right now? What are you dealing with? You know, and it can be a case of, what support do you need? What do I need to take off that bridge? Or what do you need to, you know, who needs to take something off the bridge for you? So that's another thing. And the other point that you picked up earlier about getting a practitioner in, you know, and how people can sort of feel embarrassed about that. And it always makes me laugh, because I think, you know, we will get a driving instructor to teach us how to drive. We'll take our car to the mechanic if we need it fixed. We will get a gym instructor if we want to get fit and healthy, or a nutritionist to give us a diet plan. And it's like, why would you not get a coach or support with the most important stuff, your life and your emotions and your feelings and, you know, the activities and behaviors you're doing? There's no, I mean, I'm saying there's no embarrassment in it. I mean, I know when I first started getting life coaching, I was mortified. You know, I felt like such a failure. And I remember looking at all my friends and going, they don't need life coaching, you know, but that was the judgment I made on myself. All I knew is I wasn't happy and I didn't know how to get out of it. And one of the courageous steps I could do was say to somebody, I need some help. And can you give me some guidance, or can you support me to work this out, which is what life coaching did for me. So if anybody is sitting here listening to this and thinking, oh, you know, my head's a mess, or my life is a mess, you know, please do reach out and get support, get somebody in to support you, just to be a sounding board. Because that's the other thing about a cluttered mind and thoughts. It's only when you start talking to somebody and they reflect it back to you. Like, I remember this in the early days with Alistair, the life coach I work with. I used to say things to him and he would repeat it back, and I'd go, I didn't say that. You know?
He's like, yes, you did. And Susie's like, no, I didn't.
Holy. Oh no, I've got a sign up here. And I was like, I didn't say that. And he was like, yeah, you totally did. That's exactly what he said. And I'd be like, gosh, why would I say that? And so we're not, again, it's that thing about the awareness of what is actually going on mentally and emotionally.
Inside you. And that's your subconscious thoughts. Because so you know how earlier on you were saying, how do you identify your subconscious thoughts? This is how you do it, because you'll say things on a subconscious basis without realizing it. And it's only when somebody says, so basically you're saying, and then that's when you go, no, because, and you're not lying in
Yeah.
that moment, and you're not in denial. That's your subconscious brain coming to the surface, but
Mm.
you're not aware of it. And it takes somebody else from the outside in to actually point that pattern or that cycle or that behavior out to you.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to add to what you're saying about the stigma and the shame and the embarrassment attached to it is that you're working with professionals that have probably already heard all of this before. You're not going to say anything to them that they're going to be like, oh my God, I did not expect to hear this, you know? So these people are trained up to absorb information and to deal with your words and to help you understand why you're behaving and thinking a certain way. They're not there to judge you, and that's the most important thing to remember. And if you do go to a practitioner and you feel judged, then they're not the right person for you.
No.
If you're worrying, leaving that room thinking about what did I say, why did I say, what are they going to think about me, are they going to go and tell other people about me, then you need to change the person that you're working with. You should always feel safe and secure with whoever it is that you're working with.
Yeah. And it often is the judgment that you might feel is actually your own judgment, because you've said it out aloud, and it's like, oh no, you know, I've exposed it now, I can't unsay it. So yeah, it's not easy, but it is so worth it. I can absolutely advocate that. So if, you know, our audience are listening and they're saying, okay, I've got some pretty intrusive thoughts, I need to start dealing with them, they get the help of a practitioner, you know, what can they expect to happen in that process? Okay.
So the first thing is you become, this sounds really such a simple answer. So the first thing is your mind will be less cluttered, right? So basically the first thing is you'll start to notice, right, that your head feels a lot less busier. That's the first thing that will happen. As soon as your head starts to feel less busier, you start to feel a bit more calmer, right? As soon as you start to feel calmer, you become less overwhelmed by things that are going on around you. If you feel less overwhelmed and you're triggered less by things going on around you, you'll start to feel less anxious and more in control of your life. So it basically has a ripple effect. Now, because the thing is, when we're thinking about things, it's not just a thought, it's the energy it takes up as well, Suzy. It's the headspace it takes up. It's the emotional exhaustion that's attached to that thought, right?
It's the complete... emotionally exhausting, it's physically exhausting. Yeah,
because it does, because it takes up the same amount of energy it would if you were physically actually doing that event or situation again and again. But also it might be taking you back to a traumatic time in the past that you're trying to move on from. But if that thought keeps recycling around that event, you're just reliving whatever trauma you've experienced or whatever upset you've experienced in your life. So do you see where it keeps you stuck? So the other side effect of being able to declutter your mind is that you will feel like you're able to move forward. You won't feel like you're on this hamster wheel where you're constantly moving, but you're not getting anywhere at the end of the day.
So that's interesting, because I remember working with one client and them saying, I just have no space in my life. And I was aware that they had made some changes in their life, and, you know, they'd taken some time off work. So there was a lot of physical space had been created. And I remember, you know, sort of we discussed that, and I reflected back to them that, you know, you have made some physical, but what had happened, he had made physical space in his life, but he hadn't made mental space. Yeah. And he didn't even have the ability to absorb the information that, you know, we were discussing, because that mental space just wasn't there. You know, it was just like, it was too much.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, is there a timing thing here? Is there certain steps a person has to go through until they get to that place where they can take the information, support, advice, or, you know, take the steps they need to do to create that space in their mind?
Yeah, they do. It's when they're ready. It's as simple as that. Because if you're not ready, you will talk, you'll go to therapy, you'll do your coaching sessions, you'll do everything, but you're not going to let go. You're not going to get let go. So you're not letting go of the anger. You're not letting go of the resentment. You're not letting go of the bitterness. You're not letting go of the anxiety, right? So whatever that is that you're holding on to, you're talking about it, but you're almost embedding it even more, because you're not shedding it, and you're not letting go of it, and you're not doing the necessary steps that you've been recommended or you've discussed or you've talked about to be able to move on from it. Now, if you imagine your brain like an attic that's full of stuff, right? and you're trying to put new furniture in it. Like, where are you going to put this new furniture if you've not cleared out what's already there, you know? So you need to get rid of what's already there if you want to put in new practices, new space, new belief systems, new thought processes, new boundaries. You need to get rid of what's already there. Otherwise, it just becomes like a big, huge mess. And then what happens is you just end up collecting all this new stuff and you end up leaving it right outside the door because your attic door is too full to let anything else in.
You can't even get out the door anymore.
You can't even get out the door,
You've
exactly.
yourself there, yeah.
Do you see what I mean? So it's almost like that analogy where you're like, but you're not actually getting anywhere. You're not getting anywhere because the bloody room's so full in the first place. So you need to be ready. And that's why I was making that point earlier on. It's okay to acknowledge that something's not right in your life, and you don't have to do something with it straight away. That acknowledgement of it will then slowly start building up a bit of momentum until you're ready to do something about it. It's when you're ready, that's when you actually start to see the results, because otherwise you're just hemorrhaging money, you're wasting your time, and you're just going along to sessions and adding more stress into your life when you already know you're not really at that stage to let go or to heal.
Are there other activities that you can do, like exercise or going for, I don't know, a massage, or, you know, something that's, it's not about the mind, but it's just about a bit of self-care, a bit of pampering, a bit of, you know, even empowering distractions, you know, like exercise, rather than turning to the drink or being busy with work or whatever it might be. Does that help you to get to a place where you will be ready?
Yeah, so I think there's one of two things and they're the complete opposites. So I think being still, but then being active is also very important. So being still with your thoughts without distractions, right? Without people around you, without constantly rushing around from pillar to post when you don't, you know yourself, you're just doing that to keep yourself really busy. Yeah, constant distraction. So be by yourself. And I'm not talking about like sit in complete like confinement of solitary confinement. I'm just talking about do one thing and do that one thing, but maybe do it yourself instead of having a big huge group of people around you all the time. What that does is it makes you think about things that you wouldn't normally have had time or space to think about. And then when you think about things, that's when you start realizing, how do I feel about that? What do I want to do about that? Why does that thought keep coming into my head? Why are these things even going through my mind? So I think that silence is important, right? The other opposite end of that spectrum is movement. Exercise is not just a vanity thing. It's not about looking good and being slim and doing that. That's not what exercise is about. That could be the side effect of it. The actual reason why movement and exercise is so important is because emotions are energy, basically, right, in our body. That energy gets trapped in our body if we don't move it, right? So if you want to get rid of emotion and you're finding it difficult to verbalize or articulate or kind of make sense or analyze in your head, physically you can release it from your body, which is why things like yoga, Pilates, stretching, walking, running, these kind of things are good because they actually help you to actually drain and release that energy, which is also trapped emotion from our body.
Yeah. And I'm aware that you have a client, and that is a good place to end, because it very much, it's highlighting the impact of, you know, these intrusive thoughts, this cluttered mind, what it has on our mental, physical health as well. And, you know, there's some, if you are not ready to go deep diving into some coaching or some therapy, then, you know, taking that time out to do some exercise, get walking out in nature, just these are your baby steps until acknowledging the problem, and then when you're ready to deal with it. So thank you, Cam, as always, fantastic advice. And both Cam and myself are available if you do want to reach out for support. You can contact details are in the post in the comments below. So do reach out if this has resonated with you. You feel that you need a spring clean of your mind. We are here. Me and Cam are like super organizers. We love this.
We love it. We could actually have our own show where we go into people's homes and organize this.
Totally. Oh my God, I actually would love.
Can you imagine?
I actually had a friend the other day and she was saying, oh, I need to sort this out. I was just like, oh great, let's get on with it. And she's like, no, not now. And I was just like, no, now.
So like, but I've already ordered the skip to put outside your house.
I was like, I'm on it. Okay, you just need to say the word, we'll go.
Oh, I remember when mum and dad done that. They were the ones to have a clear. I was like, right, what you need is a really big skip. And my mum's like, right, I don't want to like detox the entire house. It's just the attic. And I was like, no, you need a really big skip.
I'm like, we need to get on it. Come on. So yeah, if you need us to declutter your homes as well, we're there, and then we can.
Yeah,
deal
that
with
can
what
be our
you're
side
actually
hustle.
avoiding.
That can be our side hustle, Suzy.
Cam and Susie's cleaning.
Yeah, that's it.
Anyway, guys, lovely to see you all. Thanks for joining, and yeah, we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah.
Next
See you later.
week.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
Suzy. Bye bye.